The wedding of the season was set against a breathtaking backdrop of marble halls, golden chandeliers, and crystalline staircases. Guests arrived in sleek luxury cars, stepping out in designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. Waiters in white gloves glided across the floor with trays of champagne, while a string quartet played softly in the background. The bride, Celeste Moreau, was the heiress of a prestigious real estate empire. The groom, Adrien Devereux, the golden boy of high finance, stood smiling with practiced ease. It was the kind of event people whispered about for months before and years after. But not all whispers that night would be about the cake or the dress. She arrived quietly, almost unnoticed at first. A woman in a soft gray dress with no embroidery, no jewels, and hair pinned up in a simple twist. She wore flats instead of heels. No one recognized her. No one greeted her. But heads slowly turned, not in admiration, but confusion. And then, judgment. Who let her in? Someone whispered. Is she the help? She walked with calm grace, unbothered by the sidelong glances or the tight-lipped smiles that masked scorn. Her name was Cassandra Vale. No one knew her. Or at least, that's what they thought. Because in this crowd of wealth and power, of glittering excess and polished masks, Cassandra didn't fit. But that night, everything was going to change. They thought she didn't belong. They were wrong. Every moment Cassandra stood in that ballroom moved her closer to a revelation that would upend everything the guests believed about privilege, about power, and about the past. She hadn't come to crash the party. She had come to collect on a promise. Meanwhile, laughter danced around crystal glasses. Guests gossiped about offshore accounts, couture designers, and who had flown in on a private jet. No one noticed that the tech crew had received an unexpected update to the video schedule. A single file. Neatly labeled. Silent. Ready to play. At the head table, Adrien raised a toast, smiling at Celeste with affection that looked perfect from a distance. But when his eyes flicked across the room and landed on Cassandra, something in him shifted. The smile faltered. Just for a moment. Celeste noticed. Do you know her? She asked, voice sweet but eyes sharp. Adrien hesitated. Just someone I used to know. But Cassandra wasn't there to be remembered. She was there to remind them. Cassandra moved through the glittering crowd like a ghost in silk. People parted without realizing why, their laughter fading slightly as she passed. She made her way toward a far table near the back, not the worst seat in the house, but far enough to stay invisible. That was how she had lived for years. In the margins. Out of frame. Only one person dared approach her. It was Maeve Lynn, a former classmate from a lifetime ago. Cassandra? Is that really you? She asked, eyes wide with disbelief and just a touch of envy. Hello, Maeve, Cassandra replied, calm and composed. Maeve leaned in, lowering her voice. You look different. I thought you moved away. Disappeared. I did. And now I'm back. Before Maeve could ask more, a server arrived with wine. The label was from a vineyard in Tuscany, one that Cassandra owned. No one knew that. Not yet. The band started to play something slow, elegant. Adrien guided Celeste onto the dance floor. The crowd gathered to watch, sighing as if rehearsing admiration. Cassandra didn't watch. Her eyes wandered to the tech booth across the hall. Her phone buzzed. A single message from a blocked number, ready when you are. She didn't reply. Just sipped her wine, then glanced at the head table. Adrien caught her gaze again. This time, he didn't look away. Something had shifted. Beneath the polished smiles and expensive fabrics, the ground had started to tremble. Celeste, ever observant, noticed Adrien's distraction. You keep looking over there, she said casually. Who is she? Adrien hesitated again. Cassandra Vale. We knew each other in college. Briefly. Briefly. Celeste's tone was light, but the edge was unmistakable. It was a long time ago. Celeste turned to look at Cassandra, her gaze assessing. She doesn't look like she belongs here. Adrian said nothing. But deep down, a memory stirred. And it wasn't brief. The music swelled as dinner was served. Silver lids lifted to reveal gold-flaked entrees flown in from five-star kitchens across Europe. The wine flowed like melted rubies. The air was thick with performance. Cassandra sat silently through it all. Watching. Calculating. The screen was ready. It stood tall behind the band's setup. Draped. Hidden. For now. Celeste leaned in to whisper something to Adrian, but his attention was stuck somewhere else. A memory perhaps. Or a regret. He pushed food around his plate while nodding at guests without hearing them. 2 tables away an old man in a navy suit stood. His face worn but proud. He walked over to Cassandra slowly like he'd done it 1,000 times before. "It's time," he said. Cassandra nodded. The man was Victor Holden, one of her oldest allies. A former CEO now working quietly under a new name for a new mission. No one at the wedding knew the truth. That Cassandra Vale owned the company whose profits had built this wedding from floor to chandelier. The flowers, the tech, the catering firm. Every corner of this day had her shadow behind it. And no one saw her coming. A server stumbled and dropped a fork. A nervous laugh rippled through a corner of the room. The lights dimmed slightly as the music paused. It was time. The screen behind the band flickered to life. First came photos. Adrian as a boy on his father's yacht, a teenage Celeste in boarding school, clips of university days and early love. The guests smiled. Then it cut. A boardroom. Bright. Modern. Silent. Cassandra seated at the head of the table. Gasps bloomed across the hall like sparks. Adrian froze. Celeste's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. And Cassandra Vale began to speak. The room hushed as her voice filled the space. Calm. Precise. No anger. Just truth. Cassandra spoke a vision of legacy, of the hidden architect behind the empire everyone praised but no one saw. On-screen investors spoke in interviews, CEOs praised a mysterious strategist who had turned broken businesses into giants. Cassandra's name appeared beneath each video. Cassandra Vale. The woman they ignored. The woman they whispered about. The woman who now held the cards. Celeste's hands trembled. Adrian stared unblinking. Then came the contract. A scanned document. Legal. Clear. With Adrian's signature. A deal made years ago with someone he thought would disappear. He hadn't read it. Hadn't cared. But that paper gave Cassandra partial ownership of the company that funded this very wedding. Whispers turned into stunned silence. She stepped forward. No microphone. No cue. She didn't need either. I made a promise to someone who helped me when no one else would. Adrian's father. He gave me a chance. All he asked was that I be allowed to speak on Adrian's wedding day. 1 minute. No more. People parted. Adrian couldn't move. Celeste stared as if she were watching something ancient rise from the ground. Cassandra pulled out an envelope. This is the final transfer. Ownership of the company goes back to your family. Today I walk away. But I wanted you to remember who kept the lights on. Who built the scaffolding beneath your empire. I never needed credit. Just closure. The envelope hit the table with a soft tap that echoed louder than any toast. And then she turned. Cassandra walked slowly toward the exit, heels clicking gently against the marble floor. The silence behind her was deafening. Not a word. Not a whisper. Just the weight of realization pressing down on every guest like fog. Celeste rose from her seat, face pale. "Adrian," she whispered. "Tell me this isn't true." Adrian stared at the envelope as if it were a bomb that hadn't yet gone off. His hands shook. He opened his mouth. Closed it again. He had no words. Just shame. Victor Holden passed behind him on the way out, nodding once at Cassandra. His eyes held quiet triumph. Not revenge. Just justice. Guests began murmuring. Little waves of noise rippled as truths settled in. The girl they mocked. The woman they ignored. She had just changed the game. Maeve Lynn sat frozen, eyes wide. She remembered laughing at Cassandra once in school. She remembered ignoring her when she asked for help with a project. And now Cassandra owned the room Maeve had spent her life trying to belong in. Celeste grabbed Adrian's arm. "You signed away our future. Our name." She gave it back, Adrian muttered. "But she didn't have to," Celeste snapped, "that's what makes it worse." Back at the entrance, Cassandra paused. A cool breeze swept in from the open door. A reporter waiting outside snapped a photo. One clean shot of a woman walking away from $1 million lie without looking back. Inside, the screen faded to black. No one applauded. No one moved. Adrian finally sat down again as if his legs could no longer carry him. "I thought she was just," he whispered, "just another girl." Celeste looked at him and said nothing. Because now everyone knew. She was never just anything. The cameras outside began flashing uncontrollably. Paparazzi who had come for a glamorous society wedding now caught the first signs of a corporate scandal. The door closed behind Cassandra, but the echo stayed trapped inside the hall like a thunderclap waiting to break. Inside, Celeste stood frozen. Adrian buried his face in his hands. Across the room, whispers turned to sharp accusations. "Did you know she owned the registry tech?" someone said. "My firm took funding from a Vail trust last year," muttered a CEO in disbelief. "Her brother," another voice whispered. "Didn't he force Adrian out of a joint venture in Singapore?" It spread like smoke. No one felt safe. Cassandra's quiet grace had turned the wedding into a war zone of reputations. But she wasn't done yet. Outside, Rowan Vale handed Cassandra a leather folder. "Press release is ready. Your terms. Your timing," he said. Cassandra took it and looked down at the words that would rewrite the next day's headlines. She didn't smile. Just nodded. Across town, a television studio began prepping for a late-breaking story. An anchor reviewed the bullet points of a mysterious tech mogul revealing herself at a billionaire wedding. But it wasn't the headlines Cassandra cared about. It was the promise. Victor Holden stood outside now too. "They don't see it yet," he said. "But they will. You didn't just crash a wedding. You collapsed a dynasty." Cassandra finally spoke. "No. I gave them a second chance. What they do with it will show who they really are." Back inside, Celeste stood at the podium without invitation. Her voice trembled, but she spoke anyway. "I was taught to recognize threats. But I didn't see her. Because she wasn't loud. Or cruel. She didn't shout. She didn't take revenge. She just showed up." Maeve Lynn slipped out the back quietly. She didn't want to be part of history as a bystander again. Adrian rose slowly and faced the guests. "There's nothing I can say to undo it. I thought I could outgrow my past. Hide it. But it just walked in wearing grace and reminded me who I really was." No one clapped. But no one interrupted. Because sometimes truth doesn't ask for permission. And the storm Cassandra Vale had carried with her for years was now theirs to weather. The morning after the wedding, the city buzzed like a hive struck by lightning. Headlines screamed her name. "Unknown billionaire crashes high society wedding." Cassandra Vale, the queen behind the curtain. At a glossy morning news show, two anchors sat stunned reading through the profile. Her holdings. Her strategies. Her silence. She funded half the people in that ballroom, one anchor said. And not a single one knew. Adrian's face was on every screen. Pale. Stricken. Broken in a way money couldn't repair. In a quiet corner of the city, Cassandra sat in a sunlit cafe with Victor and Rowan. She was reading a small letter handwritten on cream paper. Her fingers trembled once. Only once. Then she tucked it back into her coat. "I need to go see someone," she said. Victor raised a brow. "Who?" "Someone who told me once that strength isn't measured by how long you win. It's how you stand when you lose everything." That afternoon she stood outside a small house far from the city. An old woman opened the door with tears in her eyes. "Adele," Cassandra said. The woman pulled her into a hug. "Your mother would have been proud of what you did. Not because you exposed them. But because you kept your word." Back in the city, Celeste received a package. Inside was a photo. A younger Adrian and Cassandra standing beside a crumbling building. On the back were 5 words in simple handwriting. "This is what you erased." Celeste clutched it like it might burn her. At the same time, Rowan Vale was making calls. One by one, Cassandra's silent assets began to surface. Foundations she had funded under other names. Shelters. Scholarships. Innovation labs. Anonymous kindnesses now traced back to her. And the people who had mocked her now owed her. The ground beneath their feet wasn't just shifting. It was cracking open. It had been 3 days. 3 days since Cassandra Vale vanished from public sight after shaking the foundations of the city's elite. But she hadn't gone far. She watched it all from a quiet estate in the hills, where birdsong drowned out the noise of collapsing reputations and rising speculation. On the 4th morning, a discreet envelope arrived at the doorstep of every major news outlet, corporate board, and political donor in the region. Inside, one thing, a simple chessboard printed in black ink. One move made. A queen moved across the board. All other pieces frozen. The message was clear. Check. The press called it cryptic. Poetic. Strategic. But no one could trace the sender. No name. No watermark. Just the symbol she had built her empire on, a silent V at the base of the board. Meanwhile, Adrian Devereux walked into a board meeting and found his seat missing. Replaced by a white envelope. Inside, his official resignation, already signed. He didn't even fight it. He just walked out. Celeste rebranded overnight. Her publicist pushed a redemption narrative. Donations. Partnerships. But the public didn't forget the silence in her eyes the moment the truth fell. Redemption wasn't a press release. And the people knew it. Maeve Lynn left the city. Victor Holden announced he was stepping down from every advisory position he held. He was retiring, he said, but people suspected he had simply completed the last mission he ever meant to serve. And Cassandra? She was seen one last time. Not at a gala. Not in a conference. But at a small bookstore tucked in the back alleys of the city. The same one where she once shelved paperbacks for minimum wage. She walked in, handed a key to the stunned owner, and whispered, "It's yours now. Just keep it safe." She walked back outside, pulled her hood over her head, and vanished into the crowd. Later that week, a mysterious new foundation was announced. It had no official CEO. No press release. But its mission was bold. To fund the quiet fighters. The ones who build without applause. Its name. The Vale Initiative. Back in the city, the chessboard image reappeared. Same queen. This time, the king had fallen.